And a very early good morning to you wrestling fans, and welcome to the March 18th edition of WrestleTalkShow. I'm your host, Joshua Zimmerman, here to bring you the latest and greatest professional wrestling news in all minor and major brands: WWE, TNA, ROH, CZW, occasionally TNA looks like WCW, so you get a little bit of that. It's got all the guys from WCW, so if you wanted to close your eyes, maybe you could pretend you're watching an old, what was that, Wednesday night or Thursday night Thunder. Quick show note and throwback to our fans like we always do. We want to thank our audience. You guys grow with us, so this is a beautiful thing. We'll get the bigger plugs out of the way in a little while, but like I said, we want to thank the audience that continues to grow with each video. More and more people get to see our content. And not the hell with it, we'll do a live spot right here. To contribute to the show, I've posted on the last several videos that WrestleTalkShow and CW, as a part of CWE Wrestling Entertainment, is now considering this talk show a subdivision of our parent company, Continental Wrestling Entertainment, which was the primary, well, it wasn't the primary focus, but we wanted to give you today's wrestling news and also an outlet for our upcoming summer events. Dates will be announced for that very soon. That's Continental Wrestling Entertainment coming to a, not going to lie to you, coming to a hall near you. Right now we're looking at different options for payment and things of that nature, working out the finer details, making sure that this time nothing can go wrong. Fans of the August 31st, August 31st, 2010, fans who arrived were sadly disappointed to find no one there after executives found out a half an hour, basically between 3:30 and 4 p.m. on the day of the show. The bell time was scheduled for 5. We had been in contact with the ring provider all day, and then right before the show he decided not to. But that's our goal with this show. But the primary thing, as always, to get involved is what you want to do. You want to be on the end where you, the wrestling fan, get your voice heard. And the easiest way to do that is visit our official YouTube page at youtube.com/CWE Company, where you can watch this video that lately we've been calling it a longer format, and that's what it is. But I'm actually happy that, well, we would have been able to find something to do it anyway, but I can't tell you how thrilled I am to learn this new software and enable us to give you longer than 15-minute sets, because there was a lot of times, to be honest with you, now that it's all said and done, guys, there was a lot of times where I would come off of something that I knew YouTube had forced my hand with its time limits, where I knew that I had to do a two-parter, but this works better now because, like I was telling a colleague last night, when you're on a roll on something or getting into a rant or a discussion point, you don't want to have to stop, upload the first part of the video, upload the first 15 minutes, make sure that went through, tag it, describe it, and then go all the way back. If your memory, short-term memory is shot like mine is, I would have to go back to the last 30 seconds of part 1 to make sure that part 2 appropriately picked up where it was supposed to pick up from. So it's just good to have this new format, new software. like I was starting to say, and I cut myself off. This, you can watch this show as well as all of our 90 plus archived videos at youtube.com/CWE Company. Visit our wrestling company site that, yes, is sometime over this weekend is due for a massive update / overhaul. So we're aware of that. But if you're new to the promotion, the general gist is still up there. And to head it off before it even happens, yes, we know it's been a while. Needless to say, we've been trying to make it or break it since 1999. We officially turned it into an official business in 2005. And we were just trying to do it right because we've had so many disappointing angles. But if you want to visit freewebs.com/CWE Company, find out all about our purpose, how we want to bring wrestling to more frequent wrestling, more entertaining wrestling when the major brand's not around, because we all know the major brand will sometimes hit somewhere on a Raw tour, Road to WrestleMania. Will sometimes hit twice, but most of the times you get to see it. I always say Philadelphia gets about a fair share. We get about a once a year, if not better, for something else. You get once a year, you get a Raw, and then you get a house show or two. But all in all, I think Philadelphia fares out well compared to other places that see it every decade if they're lucky. You can contribute to the show, like I was also starting to say. We're looking for serious wrestling followers who want to cover any programming and do columns and contribute video packages to be edited into this show, or call in to co-host. I'll leave information on the call-in process when this video uploads to our facebook.com/CWE Company page. But to get involved with Wrestle Talk Show, 20 minutes later, visit WrestleTalkShow.webs.com, visit the interactive forum, post your own question, give your own spin on the pre-existing questions, put direct comments to any and all videos directly under the video in the comments section at youtube.com/CWE Company. On the show site itself, interact with the forums, click the support the show link, click on the PayPal, whether it's $1 or $20. It's greatly appreciated. But we understand economic hard times, and if you can't do that, the next best thing, please refer a friend. If you enjoy wrestling and the coverage of such, and an unbiased, and I don't want to be egotistical, so I'm not going to attempt to describe myself, but when we start working with the wrestling geniuses, maybe we'll come up with an adjective. But in a nutshell, guys, support the show any way you can, whether word of mouth, that's the next best thing to money. The more fans we get, the more exposure we get, and we thank you for that. So that gets all the plugs out of the way until the end of the show. I know we said every 72 hours, but just looking at the news between yesterday and today, in the last 2 days, just looking at my run sheet, I have a whole show sitting in front of me. And it's not really, I should give credit where credit's due. It's updates on topics we've already discussed, topics we didn't discuss enough or missed, and just follow up and a couple of different things to keep it fresh. but just an open forum. So again, youtube.com/CWE Company. Comment your brains out, and maybe you can be mentioned on the show along with your comment. I ask that if you post a comment regarding ratings or anything like that, that I already check for myself in my research for the run sheet, that will not be noted. Direct comments are favored. If you don't want to post on the wall, you can send show-related emails, suggestions, questions, bids for the open casting call, if you will, for anyone who wants to cover. We'll need somebody for Raw, SmackDown. We have news tonight on Superstars. Somebody, just thinking off the cuff here, maybe somebody who enjoys the sport but doesn't want to blog every week. Maybe somebody who can be dedicated to covering the pay-per-views. But we'll figure that out as it goes along. Send your request again to cwecompany@gmail.com. And be sure to mention what the email relates to in the subject. Please do not throw us off, as it wastes time and we cannot effectively get to the emails if we're led to believe it's about one thing when it's really about another. So, without further ado, let's get into your news, bits, rumors, follow-ups, and everyone's favorite, the rant and segment of the night, which are all intact. Plenty of things to rant about, comment on. So let's hop to it. Jeff Hardy Sunday at the TNA Victory Road pay-per-view, as you all know from last night's video, and just the news reports itself, and how TNA followed up with it, appeared to be under the influence during his Victory Road main event match against Sting. The match lasted 2 minutes. Afterwards, the crowd chanted, poor match or shitty match or something like that, and Sting literally, without even not lipping it or anything, just shouted back, "I agree." So Sting, the icon was not impressed with the idiot. I'm just using a play on words, but I'm sorry. But like I put in yesterday's video, so I'll try not to go too much into it. TNA asked for its own problems the second you let Jeff Hardy come back to work while all this legal stuff was still in the air. Like, this guy has made it blatantly transparent now that with the home video we mentioned in yesterday's video that's available at WrestleTalkShow.webs.com, click on the video link and click on the Out of the Ring tab, and you'll find that video. If you click the other tab, you'll find the uploaded shows up till about a couple weeks ago, when family issues kind of got me off track of that, but I do intend to get back on top of that. And that's another job. We're looking for a web designer. So if it's something that you're experienced in and you feel you enjoy wrestling and feel you can apply your skill, apply it here. Help us grow from the ground up, and you will grow with us. But to just move along and kind of mix some things in with one, well, I can't really do that because the other one's the segment. But Sting, yes, not happy with the outcome of a 2-minute main event title match. Why, TNA, why? TNA followed up this behavior by, as of Monday, I want to say, like I said last night, I second-guessed myself on that video too, but it had to be either Sunday night of the pay-per-view after they saw the state he was in, or Monday morning when they saw that either this was either he still wasn't, knowing Jeff Hardy, it was probably the latter, and he still wasn't sober from the night before. But to wait until now to remove him, yes, that's right, they've removed him from the Impact tapings, citing that he was unsuitable to wrestle, unsuitable to perform. I'd say he's been unsuitable to perform for the last year, 2 years. Hell, just round up the whole 2 years that this ongoing back and forth between district attorney and judge and Jeff Hardy and Jeff Hardy's lawyers. Please, please, like I've said in other videos, if this were anyone else, if this were John Q. Public, and this is why I was so against him being the face of your company, another reason why, because with his charges, John Q. Public would have been arrested, sat in jail, till his family members could come up with the 10% or whatever your percentage is, wherever you live, come up with the 10% to bail him out. Like for the last 2 years, he's gotten to skate. And with the out of the ring style video, I call it Hardy home video, even if what he says in the Hardy home video, what I dubbed the Hardy home video more or less, is that what he, in a nutshell, the way it was interpreted by me was he was shooting at CM Punk in real life for doing, he referred to Ambien, so I guess CM Punk needs help sleeping, which a number of people do, but you're not entertained by that. But the point is, for Jeff Hardy to compare what he does and overdoes to someone who takes an Ambien one or two a night, however the dosage works, just to get to sleep, I'd say if we were comparing, Jeff, that you would be the one worse off. And to conclude this part and move on to the next topic, this is another reason why I was against him being the champion and was confused on why they continued going down the route, and everyone assumed it was because they knew the outcome of the legal proceedings or how it would work out or the odds of based on the lawyers, whatever. But just in general, what this guy's got going for him, like, to make a guy who openly gets high and then produces non-sanctioned shoot videos, or they weren't even, you can't even call it shoot, it was Jeff Hardy in real life. It wasn't like him promoting a match or hyping up his character or disrespecting a wrestler. He was disrespecting the person CM Punk, and only referred to him as CM Punk. It was not a jab at the wrestler between wrestlers and all his fun and games amongst feuds, so to speak. This was cheap shots. If you watch the video, it's rather old, but it was just cheap shots, in my opinion, for the sake of saying you had cheap shot. And then you have behavior like this. You have him falling asleep at another pay-per-view or an Impact recently, just before the new year. And now you have him physically unable to perform in the ring with Sting. He's gotten away with everything else, but you pick now to remove him from the TV tapings. Word to the wise, and not to echo, and this is where we'll end this follow-up. is you should have done it from the word go. You cannot, it is not good business, Miss Carter, or whoever runs that joint. You never know anymore. The wrestlers might have taken over. It is not good business. Pick a side, more or less. Either you're going to stand behind your man and you're going to run him through the programs week after week and he's going to perform and get paid week after week, or you're going to do what's good for your business, what's good for the demographic he affects, and for what's good for Jeff Hardy, his new wife and recent child. And this removal from the program, they're not dubbing it a suspension. They're saying he's been removed from the upcoming TNA tapings due to inability to perform. But they cited Victory Road. So, I was only joking before. If they pick now to make the punishment, it's almost like a wash. He's already exposed himself too much. You should have been backpedaling 2 years ago when you weren't backpedaling, when you were letting him do whatever he wanted, coming to the ring with lit cigarettes while 7 and 8-year-olds watched their favorite high flyer, Jeff Hardy. Well, this past Sunday, they watched their favorite high flyer and they seen what 2 years of drugs and thinking you can get away with anything. And I'm not on a high horse here. I'm just saying it was bound to catch up with him sooner or later, and maybe this will be a factor that helps him. But he didn't even compete with Sting. Sting ended that match after 2 minutes because there was nowhere else Sting could take that, because Hardy wasn't capable of taking a move. That's how bad this was. Refer to March 16th video for the initial story and a whole literal 20 minutes of why marketing drug users is not a good precedence to having your organization. Moving on, TNA has formally announced the first 3 matches for its upcoming Lockdown pay-per-view. Impact went off the air about 3 hours and 15 minutes ago. It was on what is now yesterday, Thursday, March 17th. The week before, TNA had a number 1 contender match to see who would face Sting at Lockdown for a shot at the World Heavyweight title. The contenders of the number 1 contender match were Mr. Anderson, AJ Styles, Bully Ray, and RVD. This match last week ended in a no decision to create shock value for last night's Impact. Ratings aren't even in on that. I tried. I thought there might have been somebody who was sitting at their computer the second Impact went off the air and might have had something for me, but there wasn't even a review up for it yet when I looked and did updated research on the run sheet 20 minutes ago. But we will let you know as soon as we know. This will segue into another thing that I'm not quite understanding, and it's not due to lack of intelligence. It's just maybe it's because of not only watching certain segments or certain impacts that I don't get this, but you'll see what I mean in a minute. Again, your number 1 contender was decided tonight after last week's no decision, which I'm guessing was the main event, provided shock value to see who would face Sting. I don't know, but this is kind of fun, just giving a prediction before I even have any of the notes. Nothing's been updated. It's 20 minutes after 2 on Friday morning, Eastern Time. And there's nothing about last night's TNA thus far, but I'd have to say we've been arguing the point enough. But RVD, we know what he's about. Mr. Anderson anymore, like they should just take the asterisks away and just let him wear the asshole t-shirt, kind of like I'm with stupid or the here's your sign thing. I always said that it was never a bad idea because then you know who you're dealing with before you even say hello. Have a sign or a t-shirt or something that when people walk up to you, they know whether or not to talk to you or not. Not saying he's not a good wrestler, because he is, but I don't know, for some reason I don't see Mr. Anderson. I want to root for, and I don't see Bully Ray. I see Bully Ray having his thing with Diva, and you can play that out a little more. But coming up next, repeats and how TNA is just full of them all the time, and it's on a consistent basis. But I'm voting, as far as the number one contender goes, my prediction for who won was AJ Styles. You'll have to bear with me that would mean that TNA is trying to go back to its original and working method that got them ratings, where they produce their own wrestlers instead of just buying other people's wrestlers. I know it was a different concept, Eric Bischoff, and it was a concept you didn't like because it didn't show it. It didn't allow you to take a former WWE wrestler, turn him into a superstar. Hell, just take the example of what you did. Now, I'm not saying it was completely the reasoning, but it helped. And the Edge and Christian feud will be good for after Mania if the prediction is right. But I bet you were tickled pink when you turned former WWE wrestler Christian into Christian Cage and turned him into at one point the TNA World Heavyweight Champion. And he had one of the greatest runs. That was before it went completely in the shitter. Like, you guys, like, just standard operational stuff, letting drug addicts in the building. The way he was performing, there was no way he was walking around that locker room looking normal. I'm sorry. Moving on. As it stands right now, you heard my prediction for AJ Styles as the new number one contender. But your main event is set at Sting versus whoever won the number one contendership match tonight. Let's hope my prediction of AJ Styles was right, and it would give their fresh blood a second chance, even though he should have never been he should have never been put in a position where they tossed his hype, because I remember that hype. That was something that made me want to watch TNA when I was leaning more towards WWE, and your six-sided ring. Now, that made all the difference, but like I always say, and to sum it up the easiest way, TNA had a product that was different. It was wrestling, which the wrestling fan will always flock to, but it was different. It had its own edge. It had an incredible, at the time, incredible X division, and at the same time, managed to stay under WWE's radar. Now they're so concerned with pulling ratings similar to WWE that they're repeating matches. Guess what we got for Lockdown, folks? Kurt Angle, the second the main event was the first match announced for Lockdown. Like I said, the challenger to be determined was determined last night on TNA Impact on Spike TV, 9 p.m. Central on Spike. And this was the actual segue. The main event match is Sting versus the winner of the #1 contender match for the TNA World Title. The stipulation is just a cage match. Okay, I know what that is. The TNA World Heavyweight Title will be defended in a ring enclosed with a 15-foot or better steel cage. But after that, and maybe it's because I've never seen a Lockdown, but I'll openly admit I've never, and this says something about the company, I would watch a piss-poor WWE pay-per-view over this, because obviously, I'm not saying I'm the end-all be-all in wrestling, but I didn't see Lockdown last year. If this is one of their signature things, feel free to call me out and explain this to me. But your next match announced is Kurt Angle versus guess who? Jeff Jarrett. And again, really? Like, I'm even past the exploiting of the kids and the divorce thing. But you have people who actually did pay. I'll be interested to see the buy rates when they come out a couple months from now. But you had buy rates nonetheless. And what you got in your pay-per-view for $34.95 plus tax, $40 plus taxes and fees. So just say, I always say go up to the nearest $20 bill. So say a $55, $60 pay-per-view for Jeff Jarrett and Karen Jarrett in Orlando, Florida. They're here, they're there. It's daytime, but the pay-per-view's at night. Like, give it up already. Like, really? This is not entertaining. Going to the dentist and having 5 consecutive root canals with no Novocaine would be more stimulating than seeing this go any further. Consider this the first time that I'll officially turn it into a rant that I am done with the Jeff Jarrett, Karen Angle, Jared, whoever she wants to be this week, / divorce, / you win my kids if you win the kid on a pole match, / the MMA exhibition match where Kurt leaves his boots in the ring, but it's just a shock that someone would assume you'd retire when you make a move like that. That's not insinuating anything, no. But I'm just to get back on track, I'm tired of it, TNA. It's not entertaining. Jeff Jarrett hasn't been entertaining in quite some time. And I feel for him. I understand you want to give him something to do. His brother was one of the founders of TNA that he rides that. And the ironic part is he'll probably still be bragging about that after TNA is reduced to go out of business because of the unbusiness-like business practices of Dixie Carter, who lets her talent call the shots and not her. A wrestling writer who hasn't been able to write anything entertaining to wrestling in years, Vince Russo. A creative consultant / booker / most times star of Impact. And this is another thing I'm getting very tired of, TNA. Like a lot of your people, you would not believe. Another plug here and a segue at the same time. SmartWrestlingFan.com this past Tuesday. You would not believe just the overall nonsense of it all. Like there was no order, and it just went from bad to worse. And you were selling this at $45 a piece, and you gave us a main event like that, and now instead of taking a brand new pay-per-view and doing something new, well, depending on how Sting performed, but I'm not too worried about Sting. I mean, say what you will about him, but he knows where his loyalties lie. No matter how it played out, we all knew where he was going to end up. We all had our hopes, don't get me wrong. But I think deep in our brains, we knew that this man's home's been TNA forever because he's made such a stand. Well, a reasonable stand. For those of you who don't remember, Sting turned down WWE in the original buyout because he said that he had time to more or less sit back and watch and see what they did to WCW guys. And it was made a point on the PWTorch.com, which has a live cast Monday nights 8 to 9 p.m., the hour before Raw, Tuesday through Friday, 5:30 to 6:30. And both Smart Wrestling Fan, that and SmartWrestlingFan.com, you're not doing anything. Like, okay, Sting's back. We've moved on. Like, anyone who read into this and followed it like we did to see if he would actually sign, like I said, we all had our hopes, but you kind of knew if a cat has one home for 10 years, the likelihood of him not coming home is slim to none if he ever gets lost. Finally, Knockout's title will be on the line. Madison Rayne, your current champion, versus Mickie James for the Knockouts title. Stipulations to this match include that Mickie James's hair is on the line, and it will be again in a lockdown cage match, along with the Angle and Jarrett match. Now, already, only 3 matches announced, and already I'm going to issue the warning of be careful how you place it. Don't do it like you did last month where you had 2 matches involving kids back to back. Getting pay-per-views work to an extent, but I'm sure nobody's going to want to see back-to-back and or lockdown cage interview video package lockdown cage again. You're gonna have to, guys, stop. Like I said in the video 2 days ago, stop shooting for WWE's level. Get out of the realm. You're non-existent. Work on fixing what has been broken in the last 4 to 5 years, and that's being generous. You're running a storyline of the network, but the obvious where you could come out and change everything, in an essence, come out and fix everything that's wrong and use the excuse of, or the pretext, I forget the word I'm looking for here, the subtext or underlined theory, or storyline rather, storyline of the network. Now, granted, it's been overplayed, especially by the likes of TNA, and it was used in WCW. And hey, Eric, that's why we know what it is. We've seen this before. What did I just say about repeating yourself? It only works for certain matches. I mean, even the biggest John Cena and Randy Orton fans got tired of seeing John Cena and Randy Orton. And to just go back real quick, I'm just tired of the whole Angle Jared storyline. Like, it was never going to go anywhere to begin with except create drama. And, like, I see the goal you were shooting for. And I'm not going to sit here and, like I said, pretend to be the end-all, be-all of pro wrestling. There are some things you shoot for that you try your damnedest to get, and you might not get them. But there are some things that when you go out of your way to reproduce them every pay-per-view, it's what the French call match fillers, and it usually happens when you have a poor card that you need to make worth the 3 hours and the $40 that you're charging people. But we'll get into that whole price thing in the segment. Just to tease the segment, TNA Victory Road. Did you watch it? If you did, and we'll break this down in the segment itself, but just a teaser. For what you got as a main event, just the main event alone and the overall show and the overall use of Christy Hemme, like, really? And the question and the segment for the day and the question for the website forum, WrestleTalkShow.webs.com, and click on the forums tab. You can pick any folder. I'll find it. I'm all over everything. I would recommend you send to cwecompany@gmail.com. And the next best thing is to friend us on Facebook and Twitter at both cwecompany@gmail.com, or just do what most of our subscribers do. Remember to subscribe when you're watching the YouTube video. Remember to like the YouTube video. The more attention, the better, guys. Exposure is everything, especially for a startup like us. But getting back to what's important, here's your like I said, your second, 2 of your 3 I don't want to say preliminary, but your first 3 show matches that you advertise, 2 are basically the same. They're both in it's going to be the Knockouts title and just the singles competition, but they're both going to be in a lockdown cage match, and I don't see what separates them from that outside of your first match is 2 guys fighting over, one obsessing, one would say, over his wife, and the other one doesn't know how to treat women, so how is he even married? And that's just speaking from how they presented his character. He's an ignorant, they present him to be an ignorant person, like, yeah, whatever you say, honey, yes, I'll do this, and then I never do this. Like, we all know we don't get away with that. It only works for so long. Wrestling isn't all fake. Telling her you'll get to it in a minute only works for so long in the real world, too. But that, hopefully, because the Knockouts have had a history of salvaging an Impact, even though this will be a different scale and a larger audience to shoot for buy rate's sake. But sometimes your Knockouts matches wind up being better than your single competitor matches that involve the males. That is not intended to be sexist in any way, but the knockouts actually have female wrestlers, whereas the divas, and I'll say it again, Diva search to begin after WrestleMania. Why look for new divas when you're not using the old ones? Just a thought. Look into my last 3 videos or 4 videos, the most recent ones. There's bits in there about it, and I'm sure I'll get to it because we still got plenty of show to cover. We're about 45 minutes in, about halfway through, not counting segment and rant time, but I'm looking. I know I gave you an estimate before and it wound up being 3 hours. I do apologize for that, but at the same time, I thank you guys for your viewership on that. Within 18 hours, this is good for us. I like to see them. I watch the numbers in any sort of fashion, however they move, as long as it's in the positive. And like I said, like the videos on YouTube, give us the thumbs up. But if you decide to give us the thumbs down, this is a show that we're kind of working out the kinks as we go along. If you thumbs down it, and I know I probably won't get this, but give us a reason. That way we can fix it and make it a show, like I always pitch, that the wrestling review show that the wrestling fan created. Because we're not stupid. Wrestling, like I say, week after week, wrestling just thinks we are. TNA must think we're mentally retarded. Out of what I've just mentioned and what I'll get into to begin with, these guys must think we go to work and school on small buses all day long. No disrespect to the small buses. I find that they're much less intimidating than that big bus filled with 4 people on it and 12 empty seats leading all the way to an abyss-like back and whatnot. But moving on. And this comes as the real shock, ladies and gentlemen. We need to have a moment of silence here because you remember how we advertised on the 16th that WWE Superstars last week scored a .6 the week before, and basically for its entire run has maintained between a .5 and peaking at a .7, if I'm correct, viewership rating its entire run. But WWE has formally announced that the underrated and underviewed WGN network, and one could make one solid argument for this. It may, I seriously doubt it, but this is giving it the extreme benefit of the doubt. It may have picked up more people if the wrestling fans, a bulk of the wrestling fans, weren't isolated from it. I mean, the first thing I heard when Superstars debuted was, if you're from the Philadelphia area, you deal with what's called Comcast cable. And the first thing I heard was Comcast doesn't cover it. And it seemed like every network, major network after that, didn't carry it. Now, I have a couple different views on that. One might argue, for entertainment's sake, they seen what happened to NXT from being a small-time show to we do all our own stunts live, retake. From being a small-time developmental show on national TV to being just a small-time web-based show that the commentators don't even take seriously defeats the purpose. But to move on with this, because without further ado, we've given it its couple moments of silence. WWE announces that WGN Network will stop airing Superstars shortly after WrestleMania in April. So one might say, well, who knows? It didn't specify where I read. Again, if I missed it, guys, clue me in. I'm not above being called out on anything I missed. But how does this work? Because we've already promoted a couple weeks ago that you're supposed to get this huge block between the Hall of Fame, WrestleMania, Monday Night Raw, SmackDown, and I believe they were factoring in Superstars. So one could argue you're going to get one more Superstars before it goes off the air. And another question we can put out there, and you can submit your answers to cwecompany@gmail.com. Post them in the forums at WrestleTalkShow.webs.com and click on the forums tab. Leave it anywhere and everywhere. Show wrestling that you love your wrestling, but you don't love when it's not entertaining. That's the only point I've ever tried to make here. That you do not need to turn a simple process already into a process that requires rocket scientists and PhDs. For years, take Romeo and Juliet, a story being told for generations, eons, millenniums, insert adjective here, on length. We have been telling effective, entertaining stories. Now, for the longest time, you guys call yourself wrestling marks or the internet fans, but all you guys are, and I'm putting it out here right now, because I mark out for things that deserve it, like the way The Undertaker came back. I did not mark out for Triple H because I actually thought it was a breath of fresh air that they didn't have him in the chamber, so to speak, of wrestlers that they could just throw out there, do a generic promo, generic match, and there's your filler for what we didn't really know what we wanted to do. We could have pushed a new guy, but wait a minute, our youth initiative is all going to happen at one big moment at WrestleMania, because we've taken all year, and they've taken all year since originally announcing it, and this whole month since the conference call in the beginning of February 2011, and have only boosted The Miz, and we'll get into The Miz in a minute. But no more Superstars, guys. Sorry. John Cena, after Monday Night Raw, claimed that he suffered a concussion on this past Monday Night Raw, the March 14th edition. It's noted that it either happened during the main event with Alberto Del Rio or from the post-match attack from The Miz, where The Miz was beating Cena in the head with a microphone. Now, I started out with one question that I wrote down, but as I read that, I generated another one. First and foremost, sorry guys, it's going to be your week. I think you probably figured that out by reading the news things, but let's just use TNA as our example. we have all this news, all this new research, all these new studies currently being done. Chris Nowinski and his research is a very good thing, and it works. It will help future wrestlers. This research that we're doing now will help with head trauma that is associated with every sport. But now, instead of just worrying about football, hockey, and the sports that ESPN calls real sports, even though if The Miz is involved, they'll cover it. But that's just because he was a reality show guy who turned himself into a legitimate wrestler. And if you ask me, that was ESPN's way of laughing at him without really laughing at him, because it more or less showed nobody thought you would go anywhere, and look at you, kid, you're the world champion. Like I said in the most recent video, I agree with The Miz. I agree with everything you've done. I agree that if you would have told Miz a year ago you're going to be up against John Cena, who a year ago he was calling out, if I remember correctly, he was wearing the anti-Cena stuff. Could be wrong, could be a little more dated than that, but still, nonetheless, that's how he started, cutting on Cena and calling Cena out. With all the information you have on concussions and how serious they can be, why would you let one wrestler beat another wrestler directly in the head with anything, considering just the general knowledge we already have that the slightest bump on the head could cause serious brain damage? Like, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know the exact terms, but why would part of his post-match attack be beating someone in the head when you're a company that's supposed to be focused on a wellness policy and keeping, don't try this at home, keeping the wrestlers safe, although they're wrestling, so to speak, it's actually turned into a performance. And that's another video in itself, because, again, WWE doesn't even use the words pro wrestling or wrestling when it markets its product to anyone. It uses fast-paced, edgy, dramatic, longest running, every other word except, hey, this is pro wrestling and we're proud of it. And I think Joe Negron, I believe, put it best. I could be wrong. It could have been Wade Keller. Either way, smartwrestlingfan.com, Tuesday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern. PW Torch, Monday nights, 8 to 9 p.m., Tuesday through Friday, 5:30 to 6:30. You just have all this information of how wrestlers are getting hurt, and it's the information you're working with now are on the wrestlers that took repeated chair shots over careers and build up I almost want to say the word membrane, but it's like, I guess that would be soft tissue damage or just repeated, what would that be? Multiple overlapping concussions, that there was a point where all the guy did to protect himself from a chair shot, and it's not hard. You can come walking up like Triple H has done countless times. And some wrestlers do it. The Undertaker does it, but we know that The Undertaker prides himself on preserving himself so he can at least be around for WrestleMania, and I respect him for being able to do that. Kind of coincides with my Rock thing, and at least Rock left while he was on fire. He wasn't hurt in any way, shape, or form, could still be the family man, and could go out and make more money than WWE's paying him right now. But we'll get into that. And my second point on this is, if it's a work, and we have follow-up on Twitter, so it makes me think that it was just to sell. There's a 90, put it this way, the way it's presented and how close we are to basically almost 1 day shy of 2 weeks until WrestleMania, and no one can blame them if they throw in a bunch of hype and wrestlers start getting involved. I mean, Rock's gotten involved in the Twitter, a lot of them keep in character on the Twitter and continue the stories, and I say that some of it works because it builds the feud and or upcoming or pre-seen match that will lead to all this trash talking. But why would you even have a spot where, like, if this can, taking the theory that this concussion is legitimate, which now I don't buy because I'd like to think WWE is smarter than this, but assuming for a moment that it is a legitimate concussion, why on Monday Night Raw then you were at 2.5 weeks, 2.5 weeks before your grandest stage of them all, WrestleMania 27, WrestleMania, where stars are made, or where they used to be made. This year apparently they're already all going to be there, and they're all just going to show up. That's per Vince McMahon and the first week of February, fourth quarter 2010 earnings report, that they still believe in the youth initiative, and I quote, "You'll see the youth initiative being put into, more or less being put into play at WrestleMania." And I told you in my last video, my biggest fear is they've had the last, well, however long it was, like I'm openly admitting I might be wrong with some of my timestamps here, and they are just guesstimations, but wasn't the initial youth movement like a year and a half, a year to 2 years ago, anywhere in that time frame? And the only thing, John Cena got over, but John Cena was old news in regards to status in the company. He was already in when Miz showed up. So I go back to my original complaint of, assuming this injury is real, why would you allow someone who's going to be in your main event to get hurt? But there could be a silver lining, folks. They might have waited until a week, almost 2 weeks before the actual event to do it. But the Miz might actually start getting his own heat and not have to cut his own promos to get any kind of attention over John Cena and The Rock being at WrestleMania, when the match should really be about John Cena versus The Miz to try and regain a title that he held and bring it back. Well, this is where I'll loop it all into one, more or less, and kind of shorten it because we're already into an hour, but I do have another rant or two up in here. And if it was real, why expose one of your main eventers like that and run the possibility? Like a concussion, sometimes it can be bad, but I imagine he'll be back to work next week. Playing under, if it was part of the story or the build to the WrestleMania WWE title match, where it's The Miz versus John Cena with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as the guest referee, I say if you're going to use this, and looking at Cena's Twitter update last night, he has an RTG scan scheduled for today, according to his Twitter, but we're now taking the theory that if this is an in-character move, give it to Miz. Have Miz come out next week and say, you know what? I hit you so hard, or you can tell I'm not a promo cutter. I beat you senseless or something along those lines, but give it to him. For once, don't let The Rock or John Cena or, God help us, Triple H come out first and kill anything else that might go on in the next hour and 45 minutes. And give it to Miz, because it works. If Cena's keeping kayfabe and staying in character on Twitter, then have Miz come out next week and say, I did this because I know you're coming after me for my title. I know you want my title, John Cena. And it's sad, but when you word it like that, or promo something similar to that, it would force Cena's hand, which we've been critical and criticizing, say that 3 times fast, that bring back the days, well, I'll get right into it here. Throw it to the Miz, like I said, and bring back the days of preserving and establishing your titles. 2 easy processes. They both have different roots, but they both collectively or combined achieve a lot. Let's think back. Let's go to what I'll call the think tank for a minute and think back. And now, again, to all the marks, the Attitude fans, I'm not saying reincarnate the Attitude Era, but don't you remember the days when a wrestler would go after the title, and by the end of his promo, from the first pitch to the first match that would get said wrestler the title or a contendership or get him closer, don't you miss the build for that match? And how holding the WWE title, or if you want to really go old school, the WWF title, and how it was above all other titles, as it should be, but you also had the same equal hype and preservation of your titles. We've gone in the last 10 to 15 years from a company that was title heavy and used to push, make it a point to where we would if the roles were reversed this same time 10, 12 years ago, and we were doing this, we'd probably be saying, all right, we get it, you want the title. Now we're at the point where the Divas title, Jeff Hardy already had one, but it's basically just a title to have a title, basically. Sorry about that. Little sleep deprived, but figured I'd get the show out of the way because I had some energy and I thought this would tire me out. So we'll see how that works out as it approaches 3 o'clock in the morning. But getting back on focus, look at what we've come from. We've come from an organization that was title heavy and would not let you go 5 minutes without hearing about how later on that night, whether it be on a Raw, SmackDown, or pay-per-view, this is pre-buyout or pre-brand split where everything just phased over. where everything leaked into everything else and it worked. And I still argue that when you do that, it shouldn't be credited as, oh, it's WrestleMania month, so they're pulling out all the stops, or, oh, this is the 600th episode of SmackDown, so Raw wrestlers are going to relive their favorite SmackDown moments. No, this is real simple. Go back to the way you had things. And I bring up my concept one more time because we're going to come in under the, we're definitely going to come in under the 2-hour mark, but we might be at an hour and a half, hour and 45, as we're approaching an hour and 10 minutes now. But along with your titles, here's a real simple philosophy, and you guys already commented on it once, but I still stand by it. Paul Heyman had too much debt. Everybody knew, except for Vince McMahon, who knew exactly. Everybody knew that Heyman had a habit of sometimes his guys wouldn't get paid, sometimes his guys would be told to work hurt because he needed the star power, because, I mean, not to criticize him, because Paul Heyman, like him or hate him, he was responsible for giving a generation a style of wrestling that it asked for, and he delivered. There was a reason. Oh, and I take that back, WCW. TNA, you're not copying off your failed company. You're copying off the company that just couldn't compete anymore. And I did this in one of my first videos. I forget which one it was. But that's all really what happened to Paul Heyman. I mean, I can give you the gist of it, and then I'll finish up my ideal alternative to the buyout and where your titles stand, and then we'll get into real quick, the rest of your news, and then your segments, and then some, maybe another rant or two in between some news and your segments coming up. Again, to tease that, TNA Victory Road, the segment for the night. TNA Victory Road. Did you buy it? Secondly, did you enjoy it? Thirdly, if you did not, do you believe TNA should? I think they should be doing it without question, but I'll get into it more. But do you believe TNA, for the fans that request it and complain enough, considering that was the point I lost track of earlier, all the negative emails smartwrestlingfan.com and our friends Joe Negron and host Joe Negron and co-host Dishman got about how, listen TNA, because they said it loud and clear Tuesday night, people have literally, and I know it's kind of like retiring in wrestling, you can come back to it at any time. And yes, that's the luxury of pro wrestling. You can dislike it now, and the point I was trying to make 2 days ago. You can dislike it now, but who's to say that a year from now or 6 months from now, you're not going to turn the TV back on, forget all about what used to be your favorite wrestling show being on, and find something that captures you all over again. That's why it's an amazing product. And I'm not just ass kissing to ass kiss. It's an amazing product in the sense that you can hate something 1 month, and just as fast as you're growing a true hatred for it, they change and give you something that you either want or didn't know you wanted. Like a good guy getting the ultimate digging on the bad guy, the good guy coming to save the day from the bad guy. But here's my concept, even though I've outlined it in several other videos. I believe it's outlined in the video titled Dixie Carter Get a Clue. Big Problem with Simple Solution, I believe is another title. There's a blog and or note, whatever you want to call it. I call it a blog. Facebook calls it notes, but you can check that out. We'll be, and just to tease it real quick, we'll also, we are in talks. I just emailed last night the Wrestling Geniuses vidcast YouTube production wrestling review show of doing what we announced 2 weeks ago, that we were going to partner up and co-host and come up with something. And just to tease it, I'm waiting on Wrestling Geniuses to approve it. But the topic I propose, and if he keeps and takes all the notes, you'll see my point, is Chris Benoit, and how, like I said, basically I've mentioned it in at least once in the last 5 videos. And don't forget, part of our opening videos in the archive, the Ghost of Wrestling Past, the Ghost of Chris Benoit Part 1 and 2 is what it's called. And there's a blog on the facebook.com/CWE Company, Chris Benoit, titled Chris Benoit, 22 Years of Wrestling Forgotten. And my argument is this, and then I promise I will get back on subject. I just love these no real restriction shows. Like I said to you 2 nights ago, I do a run sheet. I cover everything on my run sheet. But I have a habit, and this is why YouTube frustrated me so much, and why I needed to actually learn my webcam software if this show was going to go anywhere. Because those Chris Benoit rants could have been 2 hours worth of material. But like I said, you come off of part 1, you load that up, you tag that up, you get that all ready to be presentation. You wait the 20 minutes, 10, 20 minutes it takes, depending on how quick they're running over there at YouTube. You wait for part 1 to publish and start getting activity so you know you can publish part 2. You're set to go set to go live for part 2, and all of a sudden if you're bad, like I said in the beginning of the show, if you're bad with short-term memory like I am, you have to rewatch the last 30 seconds of part 1 to make sure where you open up at in part 2 is where you start at and that it fits. But my argument and reason for this topic is, like I've said in every video I can think of since the tragedy, or not every video, but he still gets mentioned from me. But in my opinion, what Chris Benoit, the husband, the father, the human being, did to his wife and child is reprehensible. I want no one in the wrestling community and or our audience and or the general community who just happens to trip over this video to take this the wrong way. I myself, nor any of the people that help with the WrestleTalkShow production, condone the criminal and heinous actions of Chris Benoit. But I'm going to give you yeah, you got me on the tangent, so here we go. I've decided to propose pitching how Chris Benoit's 22 years of wrestling were forgotten just because WWE seen it as bad press. And my major defense, along with many, including my videos, direct quotes, etc., is that WWE knew something was wrong. They have a top-of-the-line wellness policy that any other day of the week they pride themselves on, because a couple months ago, why you haven't, in case all you Chris Master fans were wondering, why the Master Lock was suddenly cool and then he went away and then he came back, was he, in words of the WWE, when they let him or suspended him, I believe they formally let him go, but it could have just been a suspension until he got clean with the wellness policy. But Chris Masters was thrown out for the use of steroids too. And here's my argument. Chris Masters, when you suspend a Chris Masters, it's for WWE, if you're Vince McMahon, it's good to have a Chris Masters or two, so to speak, hanging around the locker room. Why? Because the reason for why I want to really break into and I won't care if it's a 4-hour video, like I'll do an hour with the geniuses, and if they want to hang out for more, but there's plenty of, we can make a whole, like, big production out of this and make it one super show if it's done right. But like I've been doing, we're giving you updates as we get them. They don't produce as consistently as we do, and they talk about, he is right that the wrestling geniuses talk about topics that wrestling fans want to talk about now, and I agree with them, but it puts me in a spot because I've already covered them. That's why I approached him for the co-hosting thing. Some of the things he does, like, he doesn't, and this isn't a show to critique his, but I pride myself, and everyone runs their program differently. SWF is different from PW Torch, as PW Torch is different from ProWrestling.net, and it's different from any other insert wrestling review show here. But I think that if you're WWE, it's good to have a couple Chris Masters when you've got the cases of Chris Benoit. Because here we are, let's go back to, I want to say 6 months to a year, maybe less, before Chris Benoit did what he did. Chris Benoit, and it came out after the fact, because, and you've seen exactly why. If you, the wrestling fan, as smart as you are, haven't connected the dots yet. Chris Benoit knowingly to WWE and the doctor, the chief doctor, and anyone in WWE corporate in regards to talent, knew that Chris Benoit tested positive for steroid use on 3 separate occasions. And like I reported, I believe it was in the Ghost, and also put in the blog. It was in the video and the blog, I believe. When they did his blood cell count level when he died, he was basically it was kind of confusing because it was in medical terms, but to sum it up so we all understand, and so it makes sense, he had more steroids. You're supposed to have X amount of red blood cells for X amount of white, and so on within the body. When they tested him, he had, I believe, and I don't want to over dramatize, so I'm going to use a lower number, over 30 times the normal amount of, I believe the number was higher. Look back at my notes. That was more exact, as that show was during our debut, one of our first shows, one of our first of what would be many shows, and they knowingly let him fail 3 separate times. And you may say, why, Josh? What? I don't see it. What? Chris, they had to suspend Chris Masters. Ever since Chris Benoit, they had to set an example. Wrong. Bob, tell them what they didn't win. A brand new car. Chris Benoit was allowed, or let's put it this way. It obviously was kept because it surfaced somewhere that somebody got a hold of it because Vince was trying to real hard downplay even like if you would have asked Chris Benoit that day he did the Today Show right after the murder-suicide, like he wouldn't know what to say. But getting back to my point is WWE corporate talent relations, they're all one and the same. They all work for the company, which works for the wrestler, which the wrestler works for the promoter, which produces the product. We all know how these processes work. But here's the way it looks, and it looks that way in the original steroid trial case too. If you look at who is put on the stand, their quotes, and just going on this recent one, the actions of WWE. Now, I'm not going to cover everything I wanted to cover on the Chris Benoit thing, but I will cover this because I opened the proposal to a theory, so now I have to conclude it, or it wouldn't be fair to leave it open-ended like that. WWE corporate looked the other way because at the time, Chris Benoit, the rabid Wolverine, if you all don't remember, was selling out arenas. When his matches came on, dare I say, the fans popped more for that than anything else on the program, even if Benoit didn't hold a main event spot that particular night. Chris Benoit had a style, a character, mood, and traits that gave him the success. But here's where I'll sort of again jump in and say, I think, first of all, let me just clarify, WWE, and I know Mr. Benoit, you're Chris's father, and you have spoken out about it, and I believe you're doing something that's under the radar against WWE, but sir, if I could have a minute of your time and say that you need to, and not that I want to see it go, I just want to see Vince not be able to hide behind somebody else because he's turned himself into the wrestling giant. Like, I bet you right now he regrets the buyout because every time something bad about WWE comes up, well, at least they can blame WCW for what they did last week, whatever it may be. ECW, insert promotion, and I bet you Vince still wishes he had the fall guy, but that's what happens when you want to be the top dog. Eventually, you want to be the top dog so much that what happens to most of us in any situation you apply this concept in is that we want too much of what we taken. If you're talking about power, there's never too much power. When you're talking about Vince McMahon, you're talking about money. And this is where I was torn, because when I was writing up the email to pitch the idea to the wrestling geniuses, I was recalling all the valid points and backtracking all my research. This was a clear-cut case of WWE and Vince McMahon looking the other way because Chris Benoit sold well as a champion. He sold well without a title. He was an all-around great wrestler that consistently made money. But then, just to get it out of the way, so I can segue into the final part, and then we'll move on with the news and a final small rant and a segment, is instead of, well, yeah, let me just get right into the Chris Masters thing. You keep Chris Benoit because obviously at this point, their wellness policy, I imagine, like at the times that Benoit, no time's a good time for WWE to ever hit the press that the media, that its wellness policy might not be as solid as it's always promoted to be. But my argument still stands solid that at least WWE has one. And it's not like TNA's where we tell you that we're drug testing, but we don't tell you the results. So what was the point of testing? And you don't see anybody leave or get suspended. And it was, I believe, confirmed by an unnamed source in the TNA locker room that some wrestlers failed. I mean, Kurt Angle, just to go back to the steroids. Kurt Angle, not even 6-7 months ago, is on a delivery list for, what are they, like horse steroids or some kind of high level pharmaceutical grade steroids that this crock wannabe doc, no rhyme intended, but if it's funny, it's funny, crock wannabe doc pharmacist was just giving massive amounts out to whoever A, had the money, and B, could keep it low key. But we could go on and on about how keeping it on the DL only works, how every analogy only works so well until it works in a way that it works against you. But here's my argument. You terminate. I guess, like I seen the logic behind the move, because once you make the move, and especially how they bragged about how hardcore their wellness policy was, and Chris showed no signs. Chris loved his family, this, that, and the other thing. And I take other news outlets for what they're worth, but if the story doesn't sound too good to be true, it usually is true. And from the reports I got, or looked up, found, researched, that WWE never even in the super candid Today Show interview right after he died, and McMahon's going over what Chris's itinerary should have been and what his itinerary really was, you outright fire Chris Benoit, because now you're in a position where it's been a while. We've got to show these people that we still use our own policy. Even if we don't, we have to still give the fans, because although we used to market our wrestling on, we think our fans are tired of having their intelligence insulted. And then Vince McMahon, like, I should dedicate a whole show to you. And this is how these rants start, and you're the reason why I chain smoke, but that's just blaming other people. But oh yeah, that's something else you're good at. Because that's exactly what you do. Vince McMahon doesn't directly give you the steroids. Someone in WWE does. Vince McMahon nonchalantly pays the bill because he's made it too clear. He's the leader of the ship. He watches every aspect. So when you see Chris Masters get fired, you understand, you laugh at the lateness and the piss poor attempt at enforcing a drug and alcohol, a wellness policy that if you feel the need to enforce it at random times instead of when it actually counts, then it usually goes to show that you might have something that might come up in the next couple months, so you're beating them to the punch. But it wasn't bad enough, and here's my point, and I'll move on to the news, I swear. You gave Chris Benoit a pass on 3 different, completely different times, dates, and random, or so we're led to believe, drug tests, looking for anything and everything that would violate the wellness policy, including but not limited to steroid use. Okay. You're standing there. I'll play both roles. Vince McMahon and Chris Benoit after Chris Benoit fails for the first time. And it's like rinse and repeat. But you know what we found in your drug test, assuming this is even how he approaches failures, I imagine he has a lackey that just gives the failed future endeavored superstar his pink slip. I don't even think it's Vince McMahon. But you basically have Vince at this point. The way it was worded, these testings were done while Benoit was at his peak. So you get the first test back. The mad scientist hands Vince, you're Vince McMahon. You get handed this paper that tells you your now #1 fan attraction is using a drug that by your own standards set should have him suspended and or because you don't get the kind of steroid levels in your blood system that Chris had without really doing this stuff. I mean, blame it on what you will, the man still cowardly murdered his family and then hung himself. There was a lot of contributing factors. There are only rumors because it's kind of why I don't really speak about my relationships online or in public, because anyone can then take it and run with it. And people who knew Chris, who were friends with Chris, like Chris Jericho, Eddie Guerrero, etc., all the guys from WCW, you all know who they are, even though I'm kind of drawing a blank. It looked like in the tribute video, everybody was his friend, and everybody was shocked. I don't know why they were shocked. I mean, I shouldn't keep saying that because it makes me sound goofy. But I understand you can't contradict your own wellness policy. But basically what you did was first drug test failed. All right, Chris, you had steroids in your system. Yeah, I did, boss. You know steroids are banned, right? Yes, sir, I do. So why did we find them? Well, it's the same argument as X-Pac did in the original steroid trial. They told me I had what it took to go somewhere in the company. I was just too small. And let's face it looked good in matches, but Chris Benoit, without the steroids, would have lost so much muscle mass that you would have had, with no racial innuendo meant here, you would have had the Canadian version of Rey Mysterio, because he's already a small guy, but now you want to tell him you want to put him in the heavyweight division and promote him as a heavyweight guy, so he's got to actually look the part. Well, outside of putting on stilts and then putting boots over your stilts and doing it that way, these wrestlers knew, and is why I'm convinced that Vince McMahon constantly knows, because he insists on controlling every facet of the company right down to what the commentators say. The commentators aren't even allowed to work off the cuff anymore using the skills that they've acquired. They turn commentators into characters. Although I'd be lying if I said I can't wait to see the Lawler versus Cole match, to see Jerry Lawler. He might not have been able to win the world title, but you gotta believe they'll throw Michael Cole to the wolves just to let Jerry Lawler have one, and not only make that feud right, but kind of at the same time make the fact that he lost clean to The Miz for his title shot all come full circle. But you have your Chris Benoit, and he's listening to Vince go on and on about what Vince has to be telling him. But then it dawns on Vince, or an advisor comes up to him. Mr. McMahon, your wellness policy, you know, that one that you created to protect the wrestlers from exactly this. Yeah, guidelines say we have to suspend him. What? You can't suspend him. He's on fire right now. We're building a character off of him. He's going to be the underdog in a triple threat, I believe is how he won the title off of Triple H. And beat, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, I just got done saying my short-term memory sucks. But if my long-term serves me correctly, it was a triple threat versus Triple H, Chris Benoit, and Shawn Michaels, where Chris Benoit finally realized his dream after 20-some years of wrestling for various promotions, but always giving his all and always giving his character everything that Chris Benoit, the person, had. You have Vince do a double take. Well, if I let him go, I'm a contradiction. If I don't punish him, I look like I let wrestlers slide. But Chris is making me a lot of money, and if it stays on the upcline, for lack of a better word, incline, if it stays on the uptake rather, he could make me money for what would be years to come, and he did just that, based on these lies and the non-help of World Wrestling Entertainment. He failed. Here's my gist, and then we'll move into your news, because I really am tired of telling you one thing and getting caught up in another, and we're looking at maybe over a 2-hour show, but nowhere near a 3. And that's the last time I'm going to mention time, because every time I mention the time, it seems I defeat my own goal. So here you have a guy that has failed it 3 times. Like, the testers and the doctors know that this man, with no disrespect to his father or any living relative that may happen to watch this, who basically body by now, because he was a small wrestler coming in and needed to beef up, has been designed to mainline steroids. Like, he always looked at his physical peak. And not to defend it, but I mean, his son had autism. If you believe the rumors, the marriage was on rocky ground because Benoit, or the price of fame, you could say. There's a couple different rumors why the marriage, what focused on, even if it was true, but one of the things it cited is that because of Chris's stepped up role in World Wrestling Entertainment, he was now traveling more days than he had ever traveled and was never there to see his son or help or barely raise his son. So I imagine being a mother and a wife of an autistic child, being the product of 2 loving parents. One's an angel and one has room for improvement, but I love him to death. He's my father. But they basically get him to a point, I was looking for the right word. They get him to the point of he now is within reach of everything he's always talked about in wanting in the Chris Benoit career and wanting for the Chris Benoit character. So there was no way not to defend, if any of it, if that side turns out to be true and there was separation in the family because of Chris's success and travel and lack of being home, then it's a shame. But my counter argument is also, she knew that she married a wrestler. I mean, the Harts say it all the time. We didn't want our kids in wrestling, but somehow wrestling is now a solid fixture in our life, as all of our sons are or were professional wrestlers or working to become. The grandkids are now working to become the future Randy Ortons and Miz's. So that'll be interesting. But to close it off, it's bad enough you slide this guy on three no questions asked failed drug tests. But then you don't watch him at all. What is this? The hear no evil, see no evil outlook? It's bad enough. And like, I'm not trying to dig on you here, Vince, but you don't look like you care real much when independent contractors aren't worth giving insurance policies to, but when we beef them up with steroids as a part of building their careers and then build them up so much where we have to overlook our own wellness policies and guidelines, and then we have to overlook him actually probably doing the steroids or getting them for him. But now we have to go to that. Now we have to go to what's left of that family and make them think that we're sorry for their loss. And I call you out on what you do, Vince. I'm a nobody. I'm sitting right here in front of you. I tag it the hell out of it to make sure you and everybody I speak out on hears it, because I don't hide myself. So feel free to retaliate against any of the 98 videos Just fucking find the ones that have your name in them, and I seem to go on a run. But you let this guy fail 3 times, knew the mental problems that the drugs, the physical effects were just the half of it, but the roid rage that resulted in the murder-suicide came from what doctors will tell you and former users of this drug, that it's what Chris had wasn't what happens overnight with steroids. It's what happens over years of steroids. And why? Because Chris Benoit was another X-Pac. Only Chris Benoit was relevant then and would probably still find a way to be relevant now. You didn't even monitor him. Alright, we're gonna let him. It's in bad judgment. You could have even said this in a closed door conference. Like, at least show that you care by establishing this ground. You bring Chris and everybody that was in the testing room and everybody had seen the results. And you make it clear that it is obvious that to achieve the weight goal Chris had to achieve to offset his short stature, we're going to need to overlook his steroid use, but in moderation. And then right after the word moderation should have been the word however. We will now that we know this wrestler is using performance-enhancing drugs that are technically illegal to our guidelines, but we're breaking all of them to make money, because that's what this was all about. Vince couldn't afford to suspend or fire him because there was nobody who could build up the kind of heat that Chris Benoit had. There was nobody else. There are, we all have our jokes about insert another generic wrestler here. But then you have the ones that really stick out. And maybe it's just because I've had a sentimental day, but you start to see I love the business of professional wrestling, but when you see that World Wrestling Entertainment ignored drug tests, did not keep him, at least if you're going to ignore the drug tests, you make it real clean cut. Chris, we're doing this because we know it's what you're doing to compensate for your size. If we find out it's for any other purpose, you're done, and we mean done. Your dying is not worth us making millions, but oh wait, maybe it is. And we're going to send you, since you perform more than 1 or 2 nights a week, we're going to send you once a week to whatever location we're at the time, to our traveling doctor or a specialist in whatever area your live event's coming to. He can stop in during the day. No follow-up scans, no nothing. What'd you do? You kept feeding him steroids. You got him somehow. And I know there are illegal channels for just about everything. Now, you can illegally stream pay-per-views. But the funnier part about that is TNA pay-per-views are so bad, I wouldn't even watch it illegally. Like, it's literally not worth your time. But my point is to make $1 just that, like in the original steroids trial, for all in the name of Fucking having a problem talking tonight, guys. All in the name of the almighty dollar, we're going to put everything we have in writing, everything this company supposedly stands for in regards to we care about our wrestlers first and foremost. We have the most Jim Ross saying anymore, we have the most comprehensive drug policy, and then you hear that they update it, but then you hear things like this where if you're selling, you get a pass. And this is where my point comes full circle. But if you're Chris Masters and you test positive, hey, do we have anything going on with Masters that if we fired him would interfere with the bottom line? No. Did I hear you right? No. He had the master lock that we were in the process of getting over very well, but we're not going to let him pass on that, right? This one needs to be the example, right? Yeah, boss. All right, Mr. Masters, we regret to inform you, but World Wrestling Entertainment has come to terms on your release. We wish you luck in your future endeavors. And here's the whole point I'm making, or trying to make in that rant. Like I say, I know I get off topic, it's not intentional, is it's pretty sad when you can tell the difference of enforcing the policy because you want to, or enforcing the policy because you happen to have the right guy who isn't making or breaking you. Are you going to sit here and tell me, Vince, that if Stone Cold Steve Austin, you used to before his alcohol, that's another point that can be made. Before Stone Cold Steve Austin's real life alcohol problems came into play, they were letting him drink beer in the middle of the ring. And I know I might sound like a contradiction, so I need to clarify. The things that were acceptable in the Attitude Era were for that particular audience. I complain about them now. I just want the fans to understand when I contradict myself, it's not to contradict myself. It's the argument I've been making the whole time. Every time I hear, oh, wrestling used to be good, or they need to bring back the Attitude Era, or, oh, now that they got The Rock, wrestling will be good again. No, it won't. Because, I'm sorry, when you cover it like I do, when you're as involved in it as I am, where you know the inner workings, you know on a basic level how your average promoter operates, put asses in seats, ask questions later, as long as it's not blatantly illegal. And I just think it's unfair to Benoit's legacy to wrap it up and tease our co-production with the Wrestling Geniuses, youtube.com/Wrestling Geniuses to see their show, is that especially when you knew that you were the one either supplying it or condoning it. So even if I'm wrong about the one, but right about the other, either way, it comes out to WWE being in the wrong. Because if they were going to let him pass from the minute he was given a pass on those drug tests that gave them their early warning that they claimed that they never got, they got it. There's always an early warning. I hate to use the analogy, but the guy at the postal office didn't just go postal. You might get 1 out of every 10 instances. But normally, events happen because situations build atop of each other until they cannot be controlled anymore. You had your advanced warning. Vince McMahon, the promoter, the entrepreneur, the multi-millionaire who doesn't want to part with any of it to give his wrestlers security in health and finances. You're basically contracted to wrestle however long you wrestle. And like I said in the other videos, that's a two-part series too. If you want Inside the Wellness Policy, I believe it's TNA and their lack of a wellness policy, or something about WWE and their wellness policy. But as soon as you let him pass on them 3 failed drug tests, in my opinion, you then become responsible for everything in or out of character that man does that's related to the drugs. Am I saying that you sent in a team of guys and helped him whack his wife and kid and then helped him noose himself? No. You just put all the building blocks in front of him, more or less told him that the only thing standing in his way between him and wrestling success, that he had been looking like a kid in a candy store for 22 years. This is a man with a 22-year dream. Dreams like that don't die hard. They don't die at all. They get accomplished. That's why we have so many determined people. That's what makes this society so great. But to not help him at all, and then to sit there on the Today Show, Vince, I couldn't even, like when it first happened, I couldn't watch any of Vince's responses because Vince's responses were too, let me answer your question, but then we're going to move right along, because I really don't feel I should have to answer any questions, because he killed himself, and he killed his family and then himself, and it didn't happen in my ring. So I don't really know why I'm here, but I'm doing this as a PR blocker to stop any heat, because wrestling, I remember joking at the time, before I know what I know now, that every couple years the media needs to go after wrestling, because wrestling used to bring it on itself. But my main objective to this whole rant was 22 years, and like I said in the blog and the video, remember, The Ghost of Chris Benoit, part 1 and 2, youtube.com/CWE Company, is that they didn't kill Chris Benoit and his family per se. They just put so much steroids in him to, quote, build him up and his character and his success, that he got used to it like any other addict would, built a tolerance to it, and became the guy who was taking more than, I would dare argue, let's just say, if Triple H did, even though Triple H claims to be all natural. If that's the way you want to look, all natural, water weight and bloated, like, why don't we just have pregnant women's wrestling? And I'm not trying to make fun of pregnant women, but we want to see fit wrestlers, not wrestlers that barely make it in, and they've had 9 to 12 months of off time where they've been in the back a couple of times, but outside of that, haven't really done anything. But anyway, the moral of the story, because we're not even at the segment yet, like, I'd like to think this is a treat for you guys. Like, from now on, I promise you, I will not give time markers, because like I say, I always end up defeating my own purpose when it comes to them. If it's any consolation, I'm even worse with keeping appointments. Why do you think I'm up at what is now 4 o'clock in the morning? The moral of that is, and what I hope our back and forth video will accomplish, is that first Vince came on the Today Show, like literally right after it happened, to do corporate damage control. And he's sitting there with a long face, like he just ran over his puppy, when you really just ran over his meal ticket, and he was going through his head, who's going to get the boost when I get back, and who can use that boost fast enough to get to where I was, because I just lost millions of dollars when if I would have invested, which is my whole argument. If I invest even on a group plan, and even as high risk as wrestling is, it would probably be expensive because it's a high risk sport. Do it. Do you like being associated with every time a wrestler ODs or gets caught in a drug deal, or we find out in the news that such and such wrestler, or just say, for example, China wanted to take a nap, so 6 months or a year ago, she took a shit ton of Benadryl just so she could sleep? That's the one that's another video in itself, but that's one you completely reconstructed to fit an image that you had. And then when your audience wasn't there anymore, you didn't help. Well, you had the Latino heat that worked for a little bit, but, and I know China in real life can be a lot on the crazy side, but she seemed to know this business very well. And like we keep warning him, all I'm saying is the murder-suicide is reprehensible. What WWE did, its part in it, is just as reprehensible, because as I mentioned a minute ago, it's like me going up to a heroin junkie and saying, here's five bundles, a pouch of needles, and you just attach the needles to the syringes. But don't do any heroin. You're recovering. It's the same thing WWE did. We don't condone it when we're on the record, but when we're off the record, or wrestler to promoter, or investor to promoter, well, even though in all fairness they haven't like outright said the steroid business makes it most of its money off of us, but my whole thing is to ban him from everything. Like, as sad as this is going to come off, take it the way it's intended. He killed his entire family. He went into a psychotic, what's referred to as roid rage, and he just flipped out. And there's different variations of it. A lot of the common symptoms are hostility, strength, because that's what the drug gives you naturally, increased testosterone on top of already increasing it by wrestling in a ring. You're going to increase it more by shooting steroids to enhance yourself. And then we as a company, after you made us millions, and I bet you he never seen this coming, or he would have fucking gotten out while he was still breathing when he seen. And it's actually, even with what Chris did, it is two-faced. What Vince McMahon did, like I said, was gave him all the building blocks that McMahon told him he needed to succeed. You have the biggest promoter in the world telling you, and it sounds quite simple when you think about it outside the box, so to speak. All you have to do is take a little bit of these steroids every time you work a match, and we'll build up your muscle mass. So on a camera view, the fact that you're short will be secondary. But we're not going to watch you. After these 3 drug tests, you're going to get your regular screenings, and until we see otherwise, we're just going to assume you're doing it to upkeep your character. But to make the money Vince McMahon made off of Chris Benoit, especially in his peak, and basically let's just say the last 2 years he was with WWE right up until the end, he was nothing but gold. WWE had no reservations about cashing his checks, cashing the sponsorship and partnership checks that came in, because everyone loved Chris Benoit. He was the WWE's favorite wrestler because he was actually that. And you didn't. That's why I referred to the family a little bit ago. I also think it's a detriment too when wrestlers, for the most part, I've found, like to stay as low-key as possible, because 90% of the time the character that they portray gives them more exposure than they even want. But as it is with every job, they weren't there for fun. My argument is, 2 days after Chris Benoit dies, or the Monday following Chris Benoit's death, before they even know how he died, like, they throw him a tribute Raw. And this is what really appalled me, and I can't get over it. I've tried to look at it from every angle. You give him a tribute Raw that kind of basically, if you watch that Raw, it performs everything I've just said in the last half hour. They showed homage to his wrestling, tribute to his wrestling career, his dedication, his hard work, his family life in a positive light, how he was a good father to a handicapped son, an autistic child. And he, like probably half the locker room who travel 200 plus days out of the year, may or may not have been having fights about Honey, You're Never Home. But he was expected to also bring home the money, and this is what he loved to do. So let me make sure I got this trade-off right, to make sure that the scales were tipped as much as they were tipped. Alright, Chris Benoit, we're going to give you a free pass on all your drug tests. We're going to give you merchandising deals out the ass. You're going to make percentages off of anything we do with you, because everything we've been doing with you is gold. And in general, Chris Benoit, the man, is gold. You wanted to know more about him, which inclined him to build more on his character, expand his character more, do a little more promo cutting. I didn't really watch him in WCW, to be honest with you. So maybe the promo cutting never changed, but as he went from promotion to promotion, maybe his will to work just as hard for a company that he promised he would work just as hard for. But let's just review this trade. We're going to give you all the steroids you need to maintain your physique, so we can build the Chris Benoit character name. And by the way, we want ownership to your name. We're going to give you a great career turn since the buyout, give you the world title, have you reminisce with your cousins and your friends in this business as you've finally done it. The one goal that you hadn't accomplished yet, you've finally done it. We're then going to pay you more each week in your salary for however long you're holding the title, which we're alright if you hold long term, Chris, because the fans just can't get enough of you. But the day Chris Benoit dies, or 2 days later, or the day he dies, actually, McMahon on the Today Show, when they finally realized everything that was going on, yeah, I think that was when he openly admitted that they gave Benoit a tribute video, but then took it back because they didn't agree with the circumstances surrounding Chris Benoit's death. Well, isn't that funny, Vince? Because there's a list of people that were related, either wives, sons, daughters, mothers, of former wrestlers of yours that either ran their course in WWE and made WWE a lot of money, but then WWE let them go. Or if you're a Draws or just think of any of the other ones that have been injured. You've worked so hard to get, just take Draws, because it correlates with Chris Benoit, because it echoes what I'm trying to get at. You've worked so hard to get at what your goal in life has been. Like nothing else to you in life has mattered. You ever meet it, and you can tell the real wrestling fan in the wrestler from the guy who's just there to cut the promo and take the paycheck out of Vince's pocket. Like the youth movement seemed like a good idea because it was enticed, because it started with The Miz, who openly admits growing up he watched wrestling, aspired to be a wrestler. And now his big sell is, I'm literally my job is living my dream. But then, you have an opportunity, in my opinion, this is what you did, even though you claim it was out of respect. I claim you didn't want your name anywhere associated with it because you knew all of this would eventually come out the sooner it was. And you were so hell-bent on, I guess obviously there's nothing you can do when the person dies. You can't make money off them anymore. But this man, because you gave him the tools that he said that you told him and your experts told him he needed to perform, this man was more steroid than he was human, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic. We gave you all the building blocks that brought you to do what you did. But then, and my biggest point, inducting you into the Hall of Fame on your wrestling merit will never happen. Why? Because that means mentioning the name Chris Benoit. I'm sorry, Vince, but I disagree. Now, you've started to do it on a couple of the latest released DVDs where you just don't care about the artwork that's put out. You just want to get the DVD out there to see how many sales it generates. But hang the man, no pun intended, hang the man, burn the man at the stake, verbally curse him out if it makes you feel better when you watch his matches. You should also be doing that when you see Vince McMahon in any way, shape, or form, because if you notice, out of everything that's rocked the WWE, Vince McMahon has an uncanny way of never being connected to it. Anyone else see the problem there? And then you, like, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but you scare us and give us insight into wrestling's future that you're molding Stephanie and Triple H to take over. Well, then nothing will change because they're being taught your business practices. And what Triple H was allowed to do to Sheamus alone, let alone any other wrestler, anybody else would have done that. They would have been scolded and told not to bury anyone because you want to make sure you have open opportunities for everyone that you give contracts to. But to virtually come back on a Tuesday night and say, We apologize for last night's Monday Night Raw that showed 22 years of wrestling and experience and dedication. Now, mind you, it could have easily passed, and they just said, if you notice, to any naysayers, they could have easily defended and said, if you notice, there were certain pictures we didn't focus too long on with his family. We didn't want any of the surviving members to be hurt. We didn't show you crime scene photos or anything extreme like that. We didn't show you the media coverage for the week until they found out all the facts, and that's basically what happened. For those of you who don't know by now, they threw him a tribute show thinking that he was murdered at the time, and then found out the next night, by that night, that he had murdered his family and then killed himself, and pulled. I used to subscribe to WWE On Demand for the classic stuff, but pulled his name from the alumni and active roster, publicly made it look like you were sorry for a Monday Night Raw that's been your flagship for years, when all you did was did what I'm arguing now. Respect. You don't have to, and I wouldn't respect or like the man either. But a man who gives this business 22 years, and essentially because of the drug abuse that's been condoned by every promoter from small time to when he hit the big times, because I'm sure the small timers when he was younger and just figuring it out, like he figured it out before WCW because he had the frame before WCW. But I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, you can put it right in a disclaimer, we do not agree with his actions, but we could not ignore 22 years of professional wrestling. And we're going to induct Chris Benoit, the wrestler, not Chris Benoit, the murderer. There's basically no bad PR here because you just make it impossible because you don't cover any of the negative parts. You make it plain and simple to the press, to the hype, to the fans. We are going to recap in a special edition of whatever the rest, just thinking off the cuff, the life of Chris Benoit, a true wrestler. And just show wrestling clips. Show his matches. Show his greatest matches. His greatest losses. His greatest victories. Something. And then you leave a father who got to witness what his son was going through, but had to basically, like my dad says to me, you're over 18 now, you can do what you want, but I'm not saying it's right. And then any normal person second guesses it. But Chris Benoit was probably being told by those close to him that cared about him that the steroids weren't any good. Meanwhile, the people making his dreams come true and working his strings were saying, no, Chris, no one will accept a regular size Chris Benoit. There's nothing marketable in that. We're not going to tell you what to do, but here's some more enhancement drugs, steroids, and we'll be out at the Tron working on your timing for your entrances. When you're ready to join us, you can help us. They created what they ended up writing off, and no one says anything. That is going to be my point in the video. And there's nothing wrong. Hell, the Hall of Fame itself, everyone knows, and recently, the last 2 to 6 weeks have been commented on that the Hall of Fame anymore, one, it has a celebrity wing that it, for fans who didn't watch the video second to this one of most recent, they inducted Bob Barker into the celebrity wing of the Wrestling Hall of Fame, even though he spayed and neutered pets all his career and spun a wheel and guesstimated prices for prizes. But he's an avid wrestling fan, so he goes into the Hall of Fame by default. But, and I'm not saying like I'll have to do more research, but I'll leave it with this and bump into everything else. They keep saying that WWE will never... Recently, on an episode, I believe like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago on the PW Torch with, I believe it was James Codwell, could have been Wade Keller, but they were talking about Hall of Fame inductees. Yes, and I believe it was James Codwell and Brian Mitchell, or Wade Keller and Brian Mitchell. I'm pretty sure I got the host down right. But they were talking, one fan called in and said, I was a big Miss Elizabeth fan, and she revolutionized. She was actually one of the first divas when they still used to dress them up in swimsuits and just flaunt them tastefully. Now they just stick Snooki's twat right on your TV screen, and if you look in between it, you might see shades of wrestling. Because like I've been ranting forever, when you go from marketing yourself as a wrestling promotion to a live entertainment promotion, yes, you've opened many doors, but you've also closed all the ones that gave you your grassroots to professional wrestling. You bought out all your competitors. You have no one to fight with. You'll always be in charge. Maybe that's the complex. He never likes to lose, so Vince wanted to make sure he never lost again. Who knows? It's totally up for speculation. Chris Jericho, yesterday afternoon, gets attention, and this time not for dancing, as recently as March, I believe it was... I want to say February or March. It could be coming up in... I believe it was March 21st or February 21st. Either it already started or I'm a little ahead of myself, because, well, that would make sense that it hasn't started yet if this tweet's true, because he's not getting attention for his dancing, not his rock albums. No. Former WWE champion and first ever undisputed champion tweeted yesterday that he will make his return to wrestling on Friday. No specific Friday given, so the smart wrestling fan and any wrestling fan is left to assume will be tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, on my Philly. I believe that's, yeah. I always get the two confused because I wanted to say CW. Could be CW. I believe it was on there at one point, but I could be wrong. But yeah, he got done his wrestling, and I guess couldn't be bothered to do spots, even though he still comes back and draws majorly whatever breaks he takes. Like, just the little notes that I take could be videos in themselves. I mean, like this alone. like I put in my notes, nothing better to do, question mark, because you've been gone for so long, and you could have, if all this was pre-taped, you could have not beat around the bush in interviews just to say you got the interview. You could have been like, I'm doing a tour with Fozzy, and then I'm going to do dancing once dancing was confirmed, of course. It's only been confirmed for like 3 weeks, so that one might have been one you'd still keep under the vest, but don't make it sound like an immediate return to wrestling doesn't seem plausible and give the impression that the other projects you got going on matter more. That's the whole reason I wrote Nothing Better to Do. Not to bash Chris Jericho. I think it'd be great. I think the product suffered because he's not there. What gets up my craw, and another thing that all comes back to when you add it all up, if you treat it like a typical addition problem, Chris Jericho, known for his band being the frontman for his band Fozzy, which just got off of a world tour, has Dancing with the Stars, and in his own book and recent interviews over the last 6 months, has talked in great detail of the personal relationship he shares with Vince McMahon, how there's basically open communication, and how his contract and or this part's not confirmed. It's not being presented as news, so I'm not going to put disclaimers in front of it. Just the things that I summarize, I can only hope that you get that they're being summarized rather than drag you through the boring stuff that you don't want to be a part of. But basically, from what he said in interviews and what people have seen in his contracts and what he's literally done, is Jericho, and I don't want to compare him to like a Rock because he wasn't gone nearly that long, and you want to see a wrestler with another project, but I also think it enforces the support your wrestlers, promoters support your wrestlers fund by finding these guys something, even if it's like, say, a $25,000 savings bond or something that you can collect the interest on until they cash it. Something that when they're done with WWE, they're either not addicted to something or trying to still be something at 60-some in TNA. I'm sorry, Rick. People call you a legend in the business. I say all you're doing to your character now is creating a legacy of, like your buddy Road Warrior said, who, by the way, has a new book out and still has the problem with his C4 vertebrae from a power slam years ago in Japan by Rick Steiner. But he said it best. He said, Ric Flair is the best at what he does in our business, in a nutshell again, people, because I did report on it a video or two ago. He's the best in our business at what he does. Flair can turn the littlest thing into gold, more or less, but I'm just afraid he's been around so long and he'll stick around that he'll get the title of being here longer than he should have been, which you don't want to see anybody get, but this is another, I don't know, another bullet point for the reasons why, like a $25,000 grant or savings bond, something to back these wrestlers. If you're not going to give them medical care, then don't give them medical care. If you're going to give them medical care and claim you care about your talent, then get a package And even if you have to, they make decent enough salaries. Do what every other employer does. I'll cover up to a certain percentage of the total yearly cost of the group plan, and each member of it contributes weekly or however often they're paid, being yearly contracts and whatnot. And I've got to think maybe I'm sleep deprived, but I think I said in the wellness policy one or the one for workers' insurance or their independent label status, it was right around the time Linda was running for Senate, and how it didn't make sense. You care about your wrestlers, but you handed them all the tools to kill themselves and their family. Granted, the end result to actually do it was on them, but you didn't help him kill his wife. You just gave him his gun and raised his hands up. You just gave him your gun and raised the guy's hands up and put your hand over his and pulled the trigger. But he was holding the gun. I mean, anybody can do that. And I don't know, maybe I'm naive. It's the promoter. If Vince would have came out and said, we didn't know anything, like, I don't know how to word this without offending someone, so I'm just going to say it. Our condolences go out first and foremost, before I answer any questions you reporters have. First and foremost, our condolences go out to his family. We are still gathering information. I'm here to answer questions. You don't want to give this part away because, God forbid, they know you're covering your ass before you shit yourself, so to speak. I should really trademark some of these slogans. Cover your ass before you shit yourself. It's a good motto. And that's all it was. No, we apologize to the families or the remaining members. Well, don't say remaining because that's just outright cold. Chris Benoit's father, we understand, may be watching. We want to send our deepest sympathies to him. We understand that although this is a loss for us, professionally and casually, this is an even bigger loss for his father, who is obviously his flesh and blood or something like that. And give these wrestlers something to fall back on. Like, you bitched and complained. Oh, Miss Elizabeth, and this is another thing I think is bullshit, just my opinion though. There would be too much controversy because, like I was saying before I got back on the rant, or the latest one, a fan asked during the induction, or as they were doing the per week, per slot member of the Hall of Fame, a female listener called in and asked if they would ever induct Miss Elizabeth, because, like I was saying, she revolutionized the business. And the main focal point, to not repeat myself, because I just remembered that I got this far with it, was that Wade Keller said, first of all, Vince McMahon didn't say this directly, but over the course of several videos over the summer and winter, Savage's name was thought was going to come up in this Hall of Fame. And the argument's been that Vince doesn't induct you unless you look like you can still do what you're going into the Hall of Fame and doing. Plus, to not credit Savage at all, his drug use and lifestyle choices have unfortunately literally left a story on his face. And they're supposedly, according to the PW Torch, The WWE looks for the cleaned up ones because they sell better, obviously. You don't want to hear. Next up, Macho Man Randy Savage. The mystery is, will he actually remember to show up? Because, I mean, it all comes full circle. I'm not condoning everything, but if you notice, out of every major thing that annoys me, it all comes back in some way, shape, or form to giving these guys who are throwing themselves around, taking crazy moves, John Morrison free falling off of the top of a 15 to 20 foot some high cage just for dramatic effect to land basically a splat. I'm drawing a blank on the actual terminology, but these guys they work their entire lives to prove themselves to you. Then when they're middle-aged, they get, or better if you're lucky, they get accepted by you. And then you're not even like the NFL where you give them nice benefits packages and throughout, even when they retire. Vince, you're just too, I'm sorry to say it, like maybe I'm stating the obvious, but stop being, like I keep saying, stop being so much about your bottom line. When they're counting on a wrestling review show, I remember when The Rock, the second week, the follow-up that everyone was waiting for from John Cena on The Rock's initial disc. They cite that McMahon has homes in multiple locations. WWE, as I always say, because I cover these events because they're important to the smart wrestling fan, WWE quarter to quarter carries over nothing less than 200 grand, 200 million or better. And that's not what's in the bank. That's after, well, technically it's in the bank. But that 200 is after everyone's paid, all the money from the previous years is in the bank, and this 200 million is just the middle of last year up to this point this year, and I'm the richest and monopolize the wrestling world promoter, but I love my wrestlers like family, but I wouldn't insure my family so nothing happens to them. No, because John Cena, when he's 40 some years old, he'll be able to super Cena out of anything, as we've seen at 20 some or 30 some, whatever he's at. We're tired of it now, but I'm making a point. Like, I don't think to come back to it and close it real quick, when I recommended either go out on a limb and really show them you care, throw the people off guard, hell, do it as a publicity. It'll get you good hype right before Mania. Go out and the headline will be, after years, McMahon agrees with critics and buys current contracted wrestlers medical coverage. And you basically make it a limited plan that covers the essentials, the basics of what you need through life, like prescriptions and your occasional hospital stay, and the more you pay into it each year as you're getting older anyway, the better the benefits get. Like, you start out at, like, I know I'm theorizing here and maybe insurance companies don't even work like this, but, and it was always told to me that even though Wade Keller of the PW Torch is the one who first took this topic on and outright said to Vince in I believe it was a Torch Talk, like, there's no reason why you shouldn't be taking care of these guys, especially what they do for you to make you money. And what I was trying to say to a colleague yesterday, a new hire for hopefully one of many CWE projects in the work, is that they all want to give the impression of family. Like, Dixie Carter thinks everybody's part of her family, but if they were all involved in Dixie's family, I'm sure Janice Carter, the one who's actually smart with money, would be asking some of the high-end wrestlers who showed up for dinner, what are we paying you for again? But to get at my point, they all want this image of family, but none of them want to do it. We all do things for our family we might not enjoy at times. I know I do. I can't speak for everyone. You're not supposed to enjoy every ride in this theme park called life. It's just not how it's set up. But then, I said it created more angles in my first video about it. Granted, it was a shorter video, but you give them minimal but the essentials in medical and hospital, medical, dental, vision, all the important stuff, and they pay into it however often you pay them. X percentage the wrestler elects to come out of his check. So this way, and you make a minimum of, like, no, you can donate nothing smaller than 5% of your monthly income. And 5% for, hell, a starting WWE contract puts you good for a couple of months. So I really don't think they would mutiny against you if you said, I came up with a way to get you the insurance that you guys have been wanting. The only catch is, I'm going to pay, like, example, 50% of the employer-related costs, and I'm going to pass down, since I have enough people anyway, I can split the other remaining 50% amongst the entire active roster, and I don't think it would break anybody's bank. It would be like where me or you pull out a 20, Triple H pulls out 100 to pay for a candy bar. And I think you would get more respect as a promoter, because then they would know you care. You don't just talk about it at key press moments and what you'd like to be doing. What you'd like to be doing and what you are doing are two totally different things. And it would set you apart. You'd be amazed, McMahon. I'm not saying that you could redeem yourself for everything you've done to this business, with this business, in the name of this business, to people in the name of sports entertainment. But like I said, McMahon alone, maybe that'll be my next one. I'll do some Wikipedia on McMahon. Yeah, that'll be the next show, provided, well, once we get the ratings, we'll give you them. Like, as soon as they come out later today, we'll post them under this video. And here we are, rushing through the rest of your news. Cena, yesterday night, updates. I told you earlier how he had already, but when he made this post, he had already commented that he had an S. Oh, damn it. Oh. RTG scan scheduled for today. But Cena updates his status formally on Facebook, I guess to keep the fans aware. But like I said, if it's to keep kayfabe, have it come out that Miz did it. It makes sense. He's the champion going into WrestleMania. He wants to make sure he gets every advantage he can get to keep his title. So every week, or even if you just do it this week and then next week Cena goes after revenge, make it Miz. The back and forth would automatically force Miz into the story. We've been complaining for 2 weeks how Miz is a part of the match, but you wouldn't know it if he wasn't wearing the title, because The Rock and John Cena have been hyped more than anything else. But Cena comment, regardless of where we think it's at, we'll find out soon enough. Like we always complain about not being surprised, so I'll meet them halfway and let me see what they do. As of last night, he tweeted, folks must take, quote, hold on, restart. Quote, folks must take and pass, end quote, begin quote. Post-concussion in order, folks must take and pass. I'm reading this word for word because I copied it word for word. Folks must take and pass. Post-concussion in order to go back to work. I'm good and heading to Connecticut. And that's when I brought up why is the main event being beaten up this close. Wouldn't you have spanned that out over a period of time where you could have really done something with it? Now we go back to what I originally said. If it's a real injury, they're scared because sometimes concussions can take longer than 2 weeks. But if it's just to get that push to Miz, think about what they did. Like I was talking about a couple of videos ago. They completely, if this ends up coming to fruition, where this is just to get Miz the heat he needs being the champion going in against Cena, because Cena's done nothing to hype that he wants the title, or that the only thing standing between him and gold again is the Miz. And at WrestleMania, it's all going to go down. Something. Cena could say anything, and it would put both that, depending on how he did it, it would put both men, the title, and the match itself, and dare say WrestleMania, a little more over. And a little more is better than nothing at all. Presence to establish the title. We've confirmed, finally in your news, updates and reviews portion, we've confirmed the WWE developmental web show NXT learned what's on the line going into season 6. Yeah, get this, guys. Winners of season 5. Guess where you get to go as a thank you and to reward you for your hard work and dedication to the business. Guess. I'll give you a second. Well, I can tell you this much. They're not going to Florida, and Donald and Mickey won't be there. Snooki might. This might be a good show for Snooki because it's only seen on the web. Very few people watch it to begin with. She could do what she wanted, like she does on national TV, but this would just be more isolated. And we could literally control the women that inspire our young women to go out and promote themselves as a skank, but then turn around and call yourself an entertainer. Not acknowledge or comment in great detail on your addiction to alcohol, because everyone has a deep, dark secret they don't like to talk about. But I don't know, am I naive to think that being straight up anymore is dead and gone? Like everything's got to be a cover to cover something else up? Like, just come out and say, I started with Jersey Shore, I got lucky, I rode my luck out long enough to write a book, Jersey Shore and MTV still want me. They want me to go to Italy. In fact, I'd be all for them going to Italy and leaving JWoww and Snooki there, and like give them something that'll keep them busy for a while, like make their passports forged and customs or whatever doesn't recognize it till they go to try and leave, and then they can't leave for like 6 months. Just give us a breath of fresh air. But no, and this is another thing, not only, here's what we've come to. Our titles mean nothing. FCW is still a developmental brand for Florida Championship Wrestling. Is still the physical and named developmental brand that wrestlers in training go to before they hit Raw or SmackDown. But now they're using NXT for people after their FCW run that they don't know where else to put. Really, guys, come on. This isn't that hard. It's called spring cleaning, or any season you want. Just insert the word cleaning after it. And the same thing with TNA. I'll basically give you the same advice I gave to TNA as soon as we get the segment out of the way. But let me just hit this one real quick and we'll get right into your Victory Road is your segment. TNA becomes your focal point. Stay tuned. You'll either be bored to tears or wanting a refund just for hearing about it. You basically, over the last decade or better, your titles have gone from being prestigious and wanted by the entire roster to top wrestlers like Kane and others before, ironically, I think that's the whole reason he got his last title run, after he came out publicly and said, more or less, he's been working for the company for 10 years. He enjoys working for the company. If he gets the title, he gets the title, but he wasn't actively pursuing it. A month later, they had the title around him. But then, like, it's just the up and down dumb shit. Then, the guy you had the title around 6 months ago loses the title, which you wanted him to do. Like, this was just a throw to his dedication to the business. Like, we just wanted one. But you don't even carry it over for him to let him use it for future opportunities. Because Kane has been thrown into an 8-man tag, including the Big Show and others, in the list of people who, oh fuck, these guys deserve to be in WrestleMania, but we forgot to put them anywhere. Quick, what do we do? Oh, take 4 guys here, take 4 guys here. 8-man tag, everybody loves it. Not. Moving on, coming up, and our segment and what will conclude our evening for tonight. This will be over 3 hours, longer than the last video. I'm sorry, guys, I just get caught up, but I'll get the plugs and everything out of the way so it won't be too much past 3 hours, but it will be past 3 hours. Your segment tonight, coming off the heels of TNA's Victory Road, the obvious condition of the number 1 contender at the time, Jeff Hardy, a 2-minute, actually I'm giving it more credit than that, a less than 2-minute main event match against 2 great wrestlers that if Jeff had been in capacity, I'm sure it would have been exciting. The grounded wrestler, because Sting isn't much of a high flyer. That's why it was always fun to watch like Jeff Hardy and Triple H. Triple H isn't going to pull out a swanton out of nowhere. Jeff Hardy, on the other hand, might run the guardrail and kick you as you're trying to get back in the ring from your left side when you could have sworn you just saw him on your right. But again, just doing a proper entry. Coming off the heels of TNA pay-per-view Victory Road, the obvious condition of its once poster child and most recent for his TNA World Title run that they still gave him despite his legal squabbles that he's spit in the face of. Not only is that insulting to every law-abiding citizen and taxpayer and person that actually works, I can't, it would be ignorant to say that wrestling isn't hard, but what Jeff Hardy did, because I guarantee you they still cut him a check, they just they gave him a break afterwards, but he still made sure he got paid for Victory Road. I mean, he was there, so you know he got paid. TNA's pretty smart with that. If you're not on the card or in the locker room to be used in some fashion, it saves them money because I kind of agree with it. They don't really spend a lot of money every show, even though they claim that live events on the road are more expensive than that at the Impact Zone. Well, that's because you've been at the Impact Zone since forever. Of course, the owner or Universal Studios is going to give you a break. You're the only person that rents it. But then, as if all this wasn't bad enough, you had Victory Road itself, the pay-per-view overall. SmartWrestlingFan.com gave it Poo of the Week. PW Torch used their wisdom but didn't say anything nice about it in the same sense. And to add insult to injury, if you're Dixie Carter especially, but you'd like to believe as a wrestling fan too, that this got, I wouldn't say incredible buy rates, far from it. They never get the numbers of WWE. There was a time when they weren't even, that's what's funny about this business in general. 4 or 5 years ago, when they weren't even trying, their ratings competed with that of the Top Dog, and they weren't even on the radar of the Top Dog, and they were enjoying a steady growing success without stepping on anybody's toes. Now they step on everybody's toes, promote and highlight all the wrong things. Like, kids in the Impact crowd should not be seeing, what's a good word? Should not be seeing a mentally drunk Scott Steiner get fake drunk. Same goes with Ric Flair. Drinking a Zima and saying woo after you take a gulp. It's just carbonation. It's nothing that's life-changing. But here comes the question again, and now it's direct, and now I'll break it down a little more. Given that this is Jeff Hardy, well, even if you didn't know about his first problem at TNA events and falling asleep when he's supposed to be out on the ramp, somebody's got to real quick wake him up, and they got to run his music. I believe when he fell asleep at the Impact, I believe that was over a year ago. They just, lucky for them, it's in advance. and they just retaped it. So you never got to see what the crowd saw, in the sense of basically that his whole segment got restarted and he got the luxury to retape it. So my question to you is, Jeff Hardy, and this gives me a window to tap into it a little more, but I didn't want to tap into it too soon and end up being at this mark and just now getting to your first news story. But Jeff Hardy was obviously couldn't even keep himself up. He was on something. And as I said in the beginning of the show, TNA probably paid him for Sunday because he was there on Sunday. Contractually, they had to. But they announced that what I'm assuming was decided Monday night after they paid him, and when they went to pay him or go talk to him or whatever, it can be, insert your assumption here, he was still so gone out of his mind that they felt they needed to send him home. That it wasn't, not to condone one level of a drug's effect or multiple drugs effect to the other, but most people, it's like when you're drunk. They tell you to lay down. They give it, or if you still need to be up, relax, drink a pot of coffee, old-fashioned remedy. I know a lot of you have your own remedies, but drink a pot of coffee and do your best to get going, and remember that it was you that put yourself here. And the same rule applies with drugs. TNA didn't go out before the show. Well, it's TNA, so who knows? I was going to say, TNA probably didn't say to Jeff, hey, we're all going, like a food run, hey, we're going to, down to the corner of 5th and Elm to cop. Did you want anything, Jeff? Because we just assumed you didn't. Because you're already higher than we are. Like, can you come over here and breathe on me? Is what the real wrestlers were saying after the few decent matches that they did have, had to basically take the brunt of Jeff Hardy. The pay-per-view took the brunt of Jeff Hardy not being able to perform. And then, like I said in the beginning of the show, when we were hinting at the segment, you charge $34.95 after taxes. I repeat, round up to the nearest $20 bill. So just say after taxes and cable provider fees and the licensing fees and everything, it's all wrapped up into that $20-some in fees. Do you think I myself would give a refund to any customer that, like, I would just go down my list of people that you start with their credit cards first and then just automatically refund their credit cards? Like, and if you're not going to do the full amount, do like what Joe, and I actually have to credit Joe Negron of SmartWrestlingFan.com for this, because I couldn't agree more. I'm just deciding to pick at it a little more and take it a little further. But maybe not even the $45, but maybe something where you give them half of it back, because a lot of these competitors last Sunday were only halfway in their matches. Some of them mentally never came out to their matches at all. I'm sure when Jeff sobered up, he thought he'd been in the back the whole time and nobody saw nothing. Like I said in the beginning of the show, Sting said I couldn't agree more to the fans basically saying this match sucked, because he couldn't deny it. And the match, to clarify, the match did not end because there was nothing else that could be done and they had to end it because of time or whatever usually ends up happening to them as the unavoidable errors. But it got to the point where Sting couldn't do all the work anymore on a virtually just there. I mean, Jeff Hardy was there, but he wasn't in the match. So, in essence, Sting, it lasted 2 minutes because Sting ran the match. He had no other choice. His competitor, the guy that's supposed to be portrayed as his viable threat and current #1 contender coming after his title, could barely stand up. So how the hell are you supposed to sell that there could have been a chance? Like, even we know your path, but how do you even sell the tease that Jeff Hardy might win his title back when it's clear he can barely make it down the ramp? Like, I'm sure if they would have given him the option to just roll down instead of walking, he would have preferred it. So there's your question. Visit WrestleTalkShow.webs.com. Click on the forum. Answer this question. Did you order all-in-one if you could? Multiple ways to do so, but let me give you the question first. Or questions. Did you order TNA Victory Road this past Sunday? If you did, what was your overall opinion of it? Summarizing it in no more than a paragraph each email, please, or the form, I don't care what you put on there. But if you're going to email something on the show, please be considerate of the time because we run late to begin with. Did you order Victory Road? If not in advance, was there something, because I didn't even see this much, like what they're doing lately. Do you feel TNA did an effective job promoting the event and that the best matches possible were on it? I don't. Because like I said in the beginning, Hardy had to either get that way minutes before it happened when nobody was watching him, when he was supposed to be getting ready dressed for the match, or he showed up that way and kept the high going all night. And finally nodded out. But this time they woke him up and said, hey, you're not at a taping. You're at a live event and your music just hit. Come on, Jeff. This isn't even me picking on you anymore. If not for you, do it for the wrestling fans that still look up to you, that actually that sit through TNA despite what its own wrestlers say about its confusing product at times. And they come to think that they paid good money to get their seats, to think that no matter what goes wrong, at least Jeff Hardy's working it, and the icon Jeff Hardy can't even perform. And it's not because he's legitimately sick. Parents of young children probably had to make up stories because you can't tell a 7 to 12-year-old, oh, that man was just high. He's going to go in the back and walk it off. What's high? It's a state of euphoria. What's euphoria? Somewhere Jeff Hardy never wants to leave. Seriously, brother. And you don't have to like me. Your brother Matt doesn't like the PW Torch just because the Torch is quick on what they do and they're precise on what they do. If it's on there, it's been confirmed in more ways than one. And Matt Hardy stopped publishing YouTube videos to try and get further attention. and stop lying to the TNA audience, the little that's left now, and saying you're what brings the numbers, because if you're what brings the numbers, I also want a refund back for my time too, because your show still loses ratings every 10 or 15 minutes. The quarter hour reviews drop off, and then the fan will remember something that should be on right about now, and they'll come back, and TNA will think it's a spike for that moment, when it's really just the way they promoted it, or that one-time thing. And another question: are you looking forward to Lockdown Kurt Angle versus Jeff Jarrett again? What is this, to make up for the MMA fight that Jeff got Vaseline in his eyes or something, and it ended in a no disqualification or something, but it was supposed to be MMA rules? Yeah. This thing hasn't made sense in a while. I don't know why I bother trying, but send your answers to tonight's segment question to cwecompany@gmail.com. Visit all of the interactive things you can do and be a part of the show at WrestleTalkShow.webs.com. We encourage you to donate, visit the forums, send us a comment. YouTube.com/cwecompany is where you can find this video and every other 90 plus archive videos. And for the wrestling fans, CWE, Continental Wrestling Entertainment, is planning summer shows. If you have a wrestling background, in ring crew, actual wrestler, manager, anything, and you're looking for, obviously we're not big, but if you're looking for a startup that can help you grow as we grow, then you might have found the right place. And again, tonight's question, well, three questions all looped into one. Did you buy TNA Victory Road? Did you feel that TNA hyped the event properly, that all this happening, the event still would have been good if it went according to plan? Or do you think that even with the outcome the way it was, the card wasn't that strong? And with being given a less than 2 minute main event title match versus the Icon Sting and the High Flying Icon, or High Flying will now stand for something different for him, do you believe that TNA should issue refunds to those fans that request it? And also to switch that question around so it becomes a question again, or do you believe they should give it to only those that request it? Because in my opinion, if you don't complain about it, then it's your own fault. If you found something you liked on it, then we were obviously watching two different products. But they'd be stupid to just, my theory a couple of minutes ago was a theory and unrealistic at best. They're not going to willingly hand over a buy rate for every dissatisfied customer. Because then I'm interested to see, and this will wrap it up for the night, guys. Again, WrestleTalkShow.webs.com, YouTube.com/CWEcompany. Friend us on Facebook and Twitter at both CWE Company. I'm interested to see what comes out of all this. Like when the buy rates to close off our show and to start next week's show, we're going to do a bit on McMahon, and hopefully we'll have more details on our co-production with Wrestling Geniuses. You can visit them at youtube.com/Wrestling Geniuses. They do little 15-minute skits or maybe longer at this point, on the hot topics in wrestling. Kind of a different format from us, a different style, a two-man team that goes back and forth with one another. All that and much more, visit our friends at smartwrestlingfan.com every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Central. And if you're a video game fan, visit their sister company, smartvideogamefan.com. That vidcast is on 6 Eastern. So again, Tuesday, if you like wrestling and video games, from 6 to midnight, you're covered. SmartWrestlingFan.com Wrestling Review Show at 9 p.m. Eastern, and SmartWrestlingFan.com or SmartVideoGameFan.com at 6 p.m. Eastern. Visit their site for time differences and ways to contact the show, help them out. You can literally buy video games and it will help their show. They have an Amazon wish list. They have a PayPal account. They have everything you can think of. And who can forget our good friends Wade Keller and James Codwell at thepwtorch.com. Monday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern to 9 p.m. Eastern, the hour leading you right into Raw. And they do it oh so well. Lead you right into Raw with all your predictions, news bits, ratings, rumors, breaking news, anything and everything. Like I said before, Wade Keller and James Codwell really actually put what everybody else does to shame. Everybody else I think they created the mold and everybody else is just borrowing it now, because I've seen on top of a wrestling story, and then there's the way the Torch is, where it's up there as speculation, and within an hour, it's confirmed news. And dare I say, for every 3 hours that pass, they find something wrestling related to post. So the whole day is nothing but constant updates. If you follow them on the PW Torch website, which is pwtorch.com, they have a VIP members only area where they keep all their exclusive content for sale. Rates as low as $5.50 a month. All that and more. Visit pwtorch.com/govip. We encourage you to listen to more than one, because remember, the goal is to get all the information, sort out the lies, deal with the facts you've been presented, go from there, and create wrestling that entertains the wrestling fan, not the entertainment fan. Wrestling is for us. Wrestling's for me. Wrestling's for you. And until next time, we'll have your TNA Impact ratings from last night in sometime this afternoon, hopefully, along with a recap. And maybe we'll do some vlogs and start the production of the Vince McMahon topic-oriented thing. I'm going to give you... basically, I'll tease it on the Facebook page, guys. You've got all the links. I'm Josh Zimmerman saying thank you for your patience. Sorry for another long show, but I told you we'd make a show out of it, and I literally made a show out of two pages. 2 pages, a lot of thoughts and opinions, a couple questions to throw back at you to make conversation. And we have ourselves a neat little following. We have 29 subscribers on youtube.com/CWE Company. Remember, when you watch the video, don't just watch. Subscribe. Be informed every time I create another video, whether it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon or like tonight, 20 after 5 in the morning. Thank you to all of you for your support. I'm going to bed.